So today we will learn about the different tests to check the renal functions. So renal functions can be checked by a battery of blood tests and urine tests. The blood tests are marked in the red and the urine tests are marked in the yellow. So the first is serum urea or blood urea nitrogen test. Second is serum creatinine. Third is blood urea nitrogen to serum creatinine ratio. Then serum uric acid, and after that blood electrolytes like sodium, potassium, chlorine and bicarbonate. The urine tests, the first test includes our urinalysis, that is microscopic examination and macroscopic examination of urine. Next is urine protein, then urine albumin, then urine creatinine, then albumin to creatinine ratio, then glomerular filtration rate, urine glucose, urine sodium, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, urine ketones, urine bilirubin and urobilinogen, urine cortisol, urine culture, urine osmolality and urine HCG. So let us start with urinalysis, that is microscopic and macroscopic examination. Macroscopic examination of the urine, that means with the naked eyes we examine the urine. Macroscopic examination is also called routine examination of urine. So we take a urine sample and we take a dipstick and we dip that dipstick into the urine, and based on the color we measure different values. So midstream urine is taken. Midstream means nor the first urine that comes out, first part of the urine that comes out, and nor the last part of the urine that comes out, but at the middle stream. Approximately 10 to 15 ml should be enough. It is evaluated, that midstream urine is evaluated within 2 hours, because after 2 hours the urea starts changing into ammonia, and which gives us false report of alkaline urine. So what is dipstick? Dipstick is a thin plastic stick with strips of different chemicals marked over it. So it is, you can see here, this dipstick looks like this. It has different chemicals marked over it. It is dipped into the urine and this strip changes color, and based on the color we try to assess the presence or absence of the particular item which we are looking for. It is used to evaluate physical and chemical properties. Physical properties like the macroscopic examination evaluates physical properties like color, clarity, odor, specific gravity, and also chemical properties are assessed like urine pH, urine glucose, urine protein, urine RBC, presence of RBCs in the urine, urine nitrite and leukocyte esterase. So you can see here the dipstick looks like this, and it has different chemicals marked over it, and we dip this in the urine. It changes color and we match the color, and according to the color we label the presence or absence of different items. For example, pH, glucose, nitrite, protein, ketone, bilirubin, like that. It is very easy. This test is very easy and it can be done by anyone, and it is very cheap. So it is very preferred examination to check the urine. So first is color. So we know that the normal color of the urine is pale yellow. Whenever the urine is dilute, it is more lighter. Whenever it is concentrated, it becomes little darker. Red urine we get in the setting of hematuria. Hematuria is blood in the urine or simply bloody urine. Also, apart from the blood, if there is hemoglobin in the urine, if there is too much breaking of hemoglobin in the blood vessels and that is coming into the urine, then hemoglobinuria also leads to the reddish urine. Myoglobinuria, the myoglobin present in the muscles, porphyrinuria, and certain food items like beetroot, blackberries and anti-TB drugs, they also gives red urine. Then brown urine and green urine are seen mainly in jaundice, also with the consumption of drugs like metronidazole, antiparasitic drug, then levodopa, the anti-Parkinsonism, then nitrofurantoin and chloroquine as well. Next is clarity. So normal urine is generally clear. We can read through the urine. If you put something behind the bottle of the urine, you should be able to read it. That is how we term it as clear. Then turbid urine we generally get in the setting of proteinuria, lipiduria, or urinary tract infections, because these urinary tract infections, they also increases the levels of pus in the cell. Cast, if there are certain urinary casts or urinary cells like epithelial cells etc. are present, then the urine becomes turbid. Turbid urine gives an indication of all these things. Then odor is the smell of the urine. Normal urine is not having any strong offensive smell, whereas a foul offensive smell is found in UTI, because in UTI the bacteria or the organism present in the urinary tract, it changes urine into ammonia faster. Fruity odor in diabetic ketoacidosis. If a person of diabetes goes into an emergency state called as diabetic ketoacidosis, that is a metabolic acidosis, then the person urine and body also will smell like fruity odor. Fecal odor, if the urine is giving a fecal odor, that is mostly because of the fistulas, the unnatural gaps between the gastrointestinal region. Specific gravity. Normal urine is 1.005 to 1.020 in specific gravity. Increased values are found in concentrated urine and in glycosuria. Glycosuria means glucose in the urine, increased level of glucose in the urine. Decreased values are seen in dilute urine or diabetes insipidus. Fixed gravity, however, can be seen if the urine is giving fixed gravity on repeated testing, that is 1.010, then it can be an indication of intrinsic renal disease, where the kidney cannot concentrate or dilute the urine. Then urine pH. Normal urine pH is 4.5 to 8. Acidic urine, that means low pH, is seen in metabolic acidosis state, where the body is undergoing metabolic acidosis. Example, extreme starvations on diabetic ketoacidosis or dehydration states. Body goes into acidosis states, the acidic level of the blood increases. And respiratory acidosis, when the person is not breathing properly, then acidic state starts happening, or extra renal bicarbonate loss is example diarrhea. In diarrhea, because of the loss of extra bicarbonate, the blood becomes more acidic, so acidic urine starts coming out. Alkaline urine is seen in the setting of prolonged storage of urine, first of all. Second, Proteus infection. Proteus is a kind of bacteria, or distal renal tubular acidosis. If renal tubules are not able to make the urine in the normal urine pH, if they are diseased, if the renal tubular region is diseased, then it leads to renal tubular acidosis. So alkaline urine or acidic urine are not good, and they indicates acidosis or prolonged storage. Then glucose. If glucose is coming in the urine more than the normal amount, that is approximately above 200 or 180 milligram per deciliter. However, the glucose in the urine are only present whenever the serum glucose level goes beyond 180 milligram per deciliter. The detectable amounts are in the urine, the detectable amount of glucose in the urine are present only when the serum glucose level goes beyond 180 milligram per deciliter. So this is very important to understand, that if a diabetic person is having a serum glucose, a blood glucose level of say 200 milligram per deciliter, then only his urine test will show positive for glucose, right? So dipstick evaluation generally gives only qualitative information. The color indicates like we get 1 plus for up to 250 milligram per deciliter, 2 plus for 500 milligram per deciliter, but this is not exact. It is generally a qualitative information from the dipstick that yes, glucose is present or absent. Similar for protein also. Example of glucose in urine, most common example is diabetes mellitus, some pancreatic disease, liver disease, which ultimately leads to increased glucose level in the blood. Cushing syndrome also leads to increased level of glucose in the blood. So next is protein. Normal urine contains very less amount of proteins are excreted out of the urine, that is less than 150 mg per day in 24 hours. We call proteinuria, right? You just see the spelling of urea here. Everywhere the urea, wherever it is associated with some like glycosuria, proteinuria, lipiduria, it is always URIA, not UREA, because that is a separate thing. Urea is a separate thing. Here urea refers to urine. So proteinuria, whenever the urine is having proteins greater than 150 mg per day. Now the major protein of the body which is excreted in the urine are albumin. Apart from albumin, there are albumin, globulin, fibrinogen. They are excreted out in a very less amount. However, if they increase, then it is called as proteinuria. Urine dipstick is a screening test. It tells us whether the protein is present or absent. Only the qualitative test, not the quantitative test. However, we can see false positive, that is false proteinuria, if the urine is very much alkaline or if the urine was stagnant for more than 2 hours, if it is preserved for more than 2 hours. Right, so if proteinuria is detected in a dipstick test, it should be repeated after at least a week. Right, so we repeat the test if once proteinuria is positive, to rule out transient proteinuria. Transient proteinuria means the momentary proteinuria, because if some person is taking more proteins, then it might lead to proteinuria. Or if somebody is exercising, then it might lead to breakdown of proteins and lead to proteinuria. Or in the settings of fever or some other infections, the kidney might lose out some protein. So proteinuria is repeated after a week, so that to confirm the proteinuria. So the transient proteinuria can occur, you can see here, approximately up to 500 milligram per day can be lost with fever or emotional stress or exercise or urinary tract infections, as we learn, medical illnesses, right? This is called transient functional or benign proteinuria. It does not require any further investigations, whereas we call the proteinuria as sustained proteinuria or persistent proteinuria whenever the levels are greater than 500 mg per day, or at 2 tests, repeating of 2 tests after 1 week, it is positive once again. So we call that as persistent proteinuria. It requires further investigations. Then RBC or hemoglobin, one and the same thing, because the chemical in the dipstick, it basically detects the hemoglobin only. So dipstick is very sensitive to RBC or hemoglobin. Even 4 RBCs per high power field, we will learn about what is high power field. It can detect that also. So detection of hematuria by dipstick should always be confirmed by microscopic examination. So sometime the blood in the RBCs in the hemoglobin, they are quantity sufficient to cause redness of the urine, reddish urine. Wherever if the RBCs lost are very few, then the urine might not appear in red color, but in dipstick it will show the presence of RBC or hemoglobin. So once the macroscopic examination, the dipstick examination is positive, then we further confirm the RBCs. We quantify the RBCs, that how many RBCs are present, through microscopic examination under a microscope. So next is urine nitrite. So this urine nitrite is a special test in the dipstick. The urine contains urinary nitrates, but however, if the urinary tract is containing some infections with some bacteria, those bacteria converts these urinary nitrates into urinary nitrites, and this is called as nitrite urea, and these urinary nitrites can be found over the dipstick, and we make a assumption that the urine might be infected with bacteria. Then leukocyte esterase. Now this the urine contains leukocytes, and that is called as leukocyturia. So this leukocyturia can be detected by the presence of this leukocyte esterase in the dipstick in the urine, and we detect that through the dipstick. So if leukocyte esterase is present, leukocyte esterase is positive, we say that leukocyturia is present, and leukocyturia is mostly a common sign of urinary tract infection, and also leukocyturia could be the sign of acute interstitial nephritis, acute tubulointerstitial nephritis as well, ATIN. Right, all of these tests, if protein, hemoglobin, urine nitrite, leukocyte esterase, glucose, if they are coming positive through the dipstick test, we further evaluate them through the microscopic examination, that means under the microscope. So under the microscope, we take a drop of urine and we observe it at 400 resolution, and the area of the microscope which is seen with one focus, that is called as high power field area. That means one round circle that we see under the microscope without changing it, that is called as high power field, one high power field. So what can we check through microscopic examination? We can check RBC, WBC, epithelial cells, cast crystals. So RBCs, blood or RBCs in urine are called as hematuria. Greater than 3 RBCs per high power field, you can see here, this is in one circle, in one visual. If we get more than 3 RBCs, we call that as hematuria. Microscopic hematuria is invisible to naked eye. The urine will contain the yellow color, it will retain its yellow color, whereas macroscopic will become, it is gross hematuria, the urine will become bloody. So microscopically detected greater than 3 RBCs per HPF is microscopic, whereas macroscopic hematuria is bloody urine. So hematuria, the blood in the urine or the RBC in the urine, the sources could be 2. First is glomerular, the blood might be coming from the glomeruli, and the other is non-glomerular source, for example DCT, PCT or interstitial cells, or the urethra, ureters, or the bladder, that is everything else is non-glomerular source. Gross hematuria with blood clots are seen in extraglomerular bleed. Whenever the things which are bleeding outside the glomeruli, whenever they leak out urine, whenever they leak out blood, there are presence of blood clots in the urine. So if this gross hematuria consists of small blood clots, then we say that the source of blood is extraglomerular. Hematuria, this bloody urine with RBC casts or dysmorphic RBCs, we will study about them in crystals, in casts, the RBC cast. The dysmorphic RBCs are the abnormal shaped RBCs. Dysmorphic means the shape has become abnormal. Generally RBC is a concave shape, but this dysmorphic RBCs are of many shapes, like star shape or whatever, comma shape, like that. If the RBCs has become dysmorphed, then we say that the source of RBC is a glomerular disease, for example glomerulonephritis, acute glomerulonephritis, AGN. Right, so dysmorphic RBCs and RBC casts are highly suggestive of glomerular disease. Now why this happens? Because whenever this glomeruli is diseased, there is leakage of RBC from the capillaries into the glomeruli, and while passing through the basement membrane, these RBCs, they changes their shape and becomes dysmorphic also they get concentrated in the tubules, and they develop various structures which are called as casts. So hemoglobinuria, myoglobinuria, porphyrinuria, they show dipstick positive for RBCs because of RBCs or hemoglobin, but on microscopy the RBCs are absent, right? Next is WBC. In WBC, the urinary WBC are, if they are greater than 5, again 5 more than 5 in per high power field, it suggests infection or inflammation. The WBCs in the urine is called as simply pyuria or leukocyturia. Extra urinary inflammation, as in appendicitis, that is systemic inflammation, can also result in pyuria. So pyuria is not very much sensitive test for detecting the inflammation in the kidney, because it can happen in pyuria, can also be found in extra urinary inflammation. Urine eosinophils, especially urine eosinophils are markers of allergy, so they are found in ATIN, acute tubulointerstitial nephritis, AIN or ATIN. Right, parasitic infections of the urinary tracts, we find eosinophils, or prostatitis, we find urine eosinophils in specific. Right, sterile pyuria, which means that WBCs are present in the urine, but when we send the urine for culture, then we find no contamination, no bacterial infection. It is generally found in sexually transmitted infections like gonorrhea, or in cases of viral infections of urinary tract. Right, so once again WBCs are found in two conditions. One is infection, or as in UTI, and second is inflammation, as in acute tubulointerstitial nephritis. Then epithelial cells, generally the squamous epithelial cells are normally present because they are the inner lining of the DCT-PCT, they shed some epithelial cells normally, that is squamous epithelial casts. So these cells, they take structure of the tubules because they get deposited in the tubules, and they take structure of the tubules. So we find various casts. You can see here casts like this, not like this, like this, the round structure. This is epithelial cast, epithelial cells, and epithelial casts. Renal tubular injury in ATN, acute tubular necrosis, results in renal tubular epithelial cells. So if we are finding some renal tubular epithelial cells like this in the urine, then generally it is because of acute tubular necrosis. So renal tubular epithelial cells are markers of acute tubular necrosis. Similarly, if we are finding oval fat bodies like this cells which are laden with fat, basically they are the cells of this proximal convoluted tubule. So such type of fatty cells are found in nephrotic syndrome. So epithelial cells also tells us about the disease of the kidney. The next is casts. Casts are very important. So these urinary casts are microscopic cylindrical structure which are formed in DCT and collecting ducts. Right, they take the shape of the DCT and collecting ducts, and they take very different structure, and they make very different structures. So the cells or other intraluminal debris in the urine, it is trapped in the tubular protein. So the tubules are having some interstitial proteins in them which are called as Stam-Horsfall protein. So whenever these cells are trapped in them, some excreted cells or some other debris is trapped in them, they take the tubular shape casts, like, right? So first is hyaline cast. Hyaline casts are formed in normal urine, or in concentrated urine also it is very commonly found, and it suggests no problem at all. Then second is granular cast. If we are finding, we will see this granular cast in the next slide. Granular cast, it is generally found in acute tubular necrosis. The RBC cast, here you see the RBC cast. The RBCs are joined together to form a stick-like structure. RBC cast, example in glomerular hematuria. The most important cause for glomerular hematuria is acute glomerulonephritis. WBC casts, very important, and it is found in acute tubulointerstitial nephritis, ATIN, and also pyelonephritis. Vexi casts in chronic kidney disease, fatty casts in nephrotic syndrome. Then crystals are basically like crystals only. You can see here lots of crystals. So acidic urine contains crystals of calcium oxalate. Calcium oxalate, it precipitates, it joins together and form envelope shaped crystals. Uric acid precipitation, it leads to polymorphic type of crystals with various shapes. Alkaline urine, if the urine is alkaline, it leads to the precipitation of calcium phosphate, which is in rosette, which forms a rosette crystals, just various spike like structures. Triple phosphate precipitation, coffin lid shaped crystal. Triple phosphate precipitation leads to coffin lid shaped crystal. So alkaline and acidic urine, they give rise to various crystals, and these crystals tells us about the shape of the crystal tells us about which type of substance has made them. Crystals may form precipitation of drugs or drug metabolites. For example, sulfadiazine, amoxicillin, acyclovir. These drugs, if the person is consuming these drugs, then also crystals might be found in his urine. So these are the various casts. You can see here hyaline casts, the epithelial cells, the WBC's cast, the WBCs in the urine, then monomorphic RBCs, right? The monomorphic means the normal shaped RBCs, the dysmorphic RBCs. You can see here, if you zoom out, you can see here the RBCs has lost their round oval structure. Then granular casts look like this. The Vexi cast looks like this. This is a fatty cast in nephrotic syndrome. RBC cast, very important in this acute glomerulonephritis in glomerular diseases. WBC cast in acute tubulointerstitial nephritis, which is mainly caused due to allergies, drug allergies. Then the crystals, uric acid crystals looks like this, cysteine, hippurate crystals, tyrosine, or the drugs indinavir and sulfadiazine, the crystals looks like this, right? This is calcium carbonate crystals, this is acyclovir if somebody is taking acyclovir. Other investigations. So blood investigations are done in order to find the renal functions. First is urea, serum urea. Serum urea is the final waste product formed from the breakdown of proteins. Serum urea, and the normal ranges are 2.5 to 7.8 millimolar per liter. Then blood urea nitrogen. Blood urea nitrogen, there is basically no difference between blood urea nitrogen and serum urea. Blood urea nitrogen is the amount of nitrogen present in the urea, right? So in some countries blood urea nitrogen is preferred, in some countries serum urea is preferred. In our country both are preferred. So in blood urea nitrogen the normal levels are 7 to 20 mg per dl. So if the levels are increased from this, then we say that the kidney is not functioning properly and the renal functions are compromised because of some problem in the kidney. Then creatinine. Creatinine is a waste product which is formed from normal breakdown of muscles in the body. Normal levels are this 0.6 to 1.2, and they are very sensitive. Even 0.2 raise more, 0.2 above the normal is considered as a diseased one. So it is the values are very strict, 0.6 to 1.2, that is the double of 6, 12. Blood urea nitrogen to creatinine ratio. This ratio compares the blood urea nitrogen levels to the creatinine levels in the blood, and this ratio is more accurate representation of kidney function. So the KDIGO, right, the kidney disease global outcome, that kidney disease something global outcome agency, it has represented blood urea nitrogen by creatinine ratio more accurate to represent the kidney function than alone serum creatinine or blood urea nitrogen levels. So blood urea nitrogen to creatinine ratio should be in between 12 to 1 to 20:1. Then uric acid. Serum uric acid is the breakdown from the DNA or from the other amino acids. It is produced by the metabolism of proteinaceous foods, especially red food. Serum uric acid levels are normal adult male 2.4 to 6, adult male 3.4 to 7. Then some urine tests. The yellow marks the urine test. The ACR, or the albumin to creatinine ratio. So we find out the urine albumin, right? The albumin levels in the urine and the albumin and the creatinine level in the urine, and we divide them to assess chronic kidney disease. So the blood urea nitrogen to creatinine ratio was a more accurate representation of kidney function, especially in the settings of acute kidney injury, whereas ACR levels are much more accurate to determine the chronic kidney disease, the levels of chronic kidney disease. So ACR from 30 to 300 milligram per gram, that is per day level, we check of albumin and creatinine. If it is in this level, we say it is moderately increased. Previously it was called as microalbuminuria, and the the chronic kidney disease is of moderate amount. But if ACR is greater than 300 mg per day, then per gram, we say it is severely increased. Students, remember, the albumin and the creatinine here are the urine ones, the albumin found in the urine, not in the serum, and this is collected, the urine is collected for 24 hours, and then this urine albumin for 24 hours is calculated. Next is glomerular filtration rate. So this glomerular filtration rate is estimated for 24 hours of creatinine clearance rate in milliliter per minute. So we measure the creatinine clearance in milliliter per minute for 24 hours, and from that we find the glomerular filtration rate, that the rate at which the glomeruli is filtering the substances out of it. The normal substance which is filtered from it, which can be detected, is creatinine. So based on the creatinine clearance rate, we find the glomerular filtration rate. Normally it is 100 to 125 in males and 85 to 100 in females. So this creatinine clearance rate is the volume of blood plasma that is cleared of creatinine per unit time. So how much amount of creatinine is passing through the glomeruli per unit time per minute is called as creatinine clearance rate, and this creatinine clearance rate is find out like this. We find out this like this: urine creatinine divided by serum creatinine multiplied by urine flow rate, right? Urine flow rate like 0.5 ml per kg, like that. So based on this, we find creatinine clearance, and this creatinine clearance is fit into many formulas, and based on this, the creatinine clearance is calculated. For example, Cockcroft-Gault formula, it is measured like this: 140 minus age into body weight into 0.85 if it is female, otherwise not, divided by serum creatinine into 72. So there are many formulas which tells us about the creatinine clearance rate, and based on this creatinine clearance, we label we find out the glomerular filtration rate. The next is proteinuria. Proteinuria is protein excretion in the urine which is greater than 150 mg per day. Right, we have already talked about the transient proteinuria and the persistent proteinuria. Then there is albuminuria. So the 20 to 60% of the total protein excreted in the urine is albumin. So albuminuria is considered when the albumin excretion is greater than 300 mg per day. This table here is very important. So that in 24 hours the urine excretes albumin normally 8 to 10 mg per day. In 24 hours
urine excretes protein normally less than 150 mg per day. The dipstick for normally excreted protein is negative, because normally less than 150 the dipstick cannot detect. Then the albumin to creatinine ratio of urine, the ACR ratio, is less than 30 mg per gram, right? So the normal ratio, albumin to creatinine ratio, is less than this. Then microalbuminuria is when in 24 hours the urine albumin is excreted in the range of 30 to 300 mg per day. In 24 hours it is greater than 150 mg per day. Microalbuminuria is not calculated for urine protein. Microalbuminuria means when the albumin is excreted in a smaller range, in a mild range, or in a moderate range, that is 30 to 300 mg per day. whereas albumin to creatinine ratio in microalbuminuria is in the range of 30 to 300 mg per day. The macroalbuminuria, or which is actually called as proteinuria, is labeled when the urine albumin test shows greater than 300 mg per day values, or the urine protein value shows greater than 150 mg per day. However, the exact values are always greater than 500 mg per day, right? The urine dipstick is able to find out urine protein whenever the levels are greater than 500 mg per day, but technically the proteinuria is labeled whenever the urine protein levels goes beyond 150 mg per day. The dipstick shows 3 positives or 4 positives based on the levels. For 4 positive it is beyond 1000 mg per day, and for 3 positive it is from 300 to 1000 mg per day, like that. But however, the dipstick only tells us about the presence or absence. Positive means presence, 3 positive, 4 positive means strongly present. When the urine protein is confirmed by dipstick examination, that is macroscopic examination, we quantify it by 24-hour urine albumin and 24-hour urine protein test, right? The albumin to creatinine ratio in this case, macroalbuminuria, is greater than 300 mg per gram, right? So why this microalbuminuria and macroalbuminuria? Because we know that nephritic and nephrotic syndromes are differentiated based on the protein leakage. In nephrotic syndrome, the protein leakage is more in the case of microalbuminuria or proteinuria, whereas in nephritic syndrome the protein loss is less, and it is in the category of microalbuminuria. So keep studying and do well.